welcome to Retech, and today we're going to cover another Amiga episode, but this time it's concerning the software, and it's all about a program called Dr. Tease, and it's mainly an educational package. It wasn't really sold out into general use in the public. I think the ATARI ST was the one that was basically sold out more into the public than the Amiga version, and it's quite a rare thing to kind of find on the market at the moment. So we're going to take a look at what this is all about. Now, we've done a little bit before on the Amiga and its Midi capabilities, and today we're using the Amiga 600 with the Midi interface that we've used before, and it's the Datel Midi master interface, and you probably recognize it from one of my previous videos and previous installs on using Midi on this machine, and it's a very good Midi interface. It's very reliable, and we're just going to use a period keyboard again. It's another Yamaha keyboard, and this one is the PSR 50, which we used previously, so it kind of sets a bit of a benchmark in comparison to the software and the hardware that we used previously. Now, this is the disc, and it's basically, it says for educational use only, and it's also stamped all over the book, and it's basically a MIDI recording studio. It's meant for the Amiga 500, 1000 and 2000, but you know, the Commodore Amiga 600 is basically a 500 plus, so there's no compatibility issues. Now, saying that, I tried the original setup using a Casio MIDI keyboard. Now, it was a Casio tone bank, one of the larger tone banks, and it didn't work. It didn't work with the way this software sees this MIDI instrument for some reason, so the Casio was a big failure. So that's why I reverted back to use my baseline, which is the Yamaha PSR here, the PSR 50. So everything else is exactly the same as what we used before on the previous MIDI installation and the previous MIDI video for the Amiga. So let's take a quick look at how this thing's put together. And the manual for this is very, very comprehensive, and it covers a lot of how this MIDI platform works. Now, the system was originally designed for the 500, 1000 and 200, so there are limitations to exactly how much this system can store in terms of MIDI data, and reading through the manual, there seems to be a limitation on the track size. Now, that's something I haven't really come up against with the other software packages that I've used for the Amiga, and the last one being the Sequencer 1 Plus, which is the system I used in a previous video, which you know, here's a clip just to show you it working with the Amiga. Kind of very late 1980s fare. It's quite a basic keyboard, and it's not the best sounding thing in the world, but it will actually do what we need to do today, and it gives you an idea of what you can do, and you can put much more complicated and complex instruments. Now, that system seemed to be very good, and it handled tracks and sequences very, very well. It was a little bit on the basic side as far as sequences go, but I'm kind of expecting more from this. So let's get this booted up and let's take a look. Okay, as you can see, it's just a standard install on a Commodore Amiga, and all we need to do is to launch the program. Now while that's installing, we're just going to cover the this setup on here. We have a PSR 50, a Amiga 600. It's got a little bit more memory than a standard Amiga. Your Midi master interface, and it's all connected together with standard Midi cabling. Now there's nothing extraordinary or unusual in that, so it's all very similar to most Midi setups, whether it's on the Amiga or the ATARI ST. So one thing you do notice is we have a memory allocation screen just here. Now on this screen you basically tell it how much memory you want to use for the system itself. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the baseline here because this is where it would have been for a standard Amiga 500, 1000 and 2000. So I don't really want to mess with it that much. I want to see the actual system working the way it was intended on the baseline machines. So the front end is quite plain really. There's not a lot on it. I mean, your first kind of thoughts is where do you lay down the tracks? And it looks like you've got a track selection here. So you have your blank tracks here, you got your record button, you stop, you pause, you play, which is kind of standard fare. It's nothing really unusual about that. And then you've got re-record, erase track, cue your track up, start and stop, and that really seems about it. So what you tend to do is, once the keyboard is actually switched on and you start playing, you will actually see it records it straight away, which is a bit bizarre because it's using the MIDI keyboard to start and stop the track. So if I stop the track here and then I actually play, you can see it starts and stops it straight away, which is a bit unusual. And the other bizarre thing on this that I've just noticed is that it's actually starting off on the backing track sounds that this keyboard has in its memory. So it's actually picking a drum sound and a backing track to kick it all off with, which is very unusual because I haven't actually told it to do anything yet. It's just starting straight away. So if I press another key, you can hear it's kicked it straight off again. So if I stop and then play, okay, so there's both tracks playing, but it's a bit weird, it's a bit strange the way it does that. Now there is a merge option which is meant to allow the MIDI data to be merged with whatever track you're using or whatever sound you're using on this, so it will pull it straight from the keyboard. But that again kicks it straight off again. So whatever you're doing on this keyboard, it just literally kicks it straight off, and it's a bit of an oddball. So if I go and select edit on here, we get the track editor here, and you've got a list of these look more like something out of a Commodore 64 than an Amiga really, and it's just a list of erase, delete, paste, copy, cut, get backup, print, save, record, load, save, and you know, the usual kind of fare that you would find or you would expect to find on a non-mouse driven platform. So if you look at it, you just think, well, how do I access that? Well, again, you select with your mouse. Okay, so you are erasing, I'm just erasing the tracks now. Okay, or you can clear all tracks. I'll clear all, and you're back to square one again with the actual sequencer. So I'm going to set the keyboard up a little differently and then see if we can record something. Okay, so I'm going to set the keyboard up with a slightly different start off. I'm going to use just a basic metal style intro backing track, and we're just going to use a cosmic kind of sounding track just to get this running with some kind of thing laid down. So we're going to just do that now and then see what we can do with the actual sequencer itself. So here we go. Let's kick this off. We're going to hit record and we're going to basically see if we can get this to put down a track. Okay, so there's a little bit of a track down there just to see what it sounds like. So we're going to play it back using the Midi function on here and then see what it sounds like. Okay, so use just as most MIDI systems go, it records it the way you've played it. So you can kind of improve it or upgrade it or even speed the track up just on a few simple kind of measures. So if I want to increase the actual speed of the track, we'll give that a try. And as you can see, it just picks the pace up as you need to. And you can also drop it down as well, which is something you can do with most. And as you can see, it kind of just drops the speed as you need to. But what you might have noticed is the actual backing track, it doesn't do anything with it. It just literally picks that up from the MIDI keyboard. It doesn't record that track at all. It doesn't really record anything about that. All it's doing is sending a signal to kick off your backing track through the synthesizer itself. So that's a bit of a downside really, because on the other systems I've used on this Amiga and the ATARI ST, you can actually regulate your backing. You can regulate the whole track as well, which is something you can't really do on this, or don't appear to be able to do. So let's just put this back to normal, and then we'll add in another track to kind of beef it out a bit. And there it's back to the original 120 BPM. So if we stop it there, and all I want to do is add in another track, just this track 2, just to record something with it as well. So let's kick this off and let's start again. But as always, you have to start it off on the keyboard. So let's go. Okay, so we're just going to play that back and see what it sounds like. Okay, so it's quite easy to lay things down, but I've got a funny feeling that I'm actually hitting the limit of the memory on this machine, so it's going to be quite interesting to see how much you can actually put onto here using the standard amount of memory that the Amiga came with, not the extended memory that this machine has on board. Now, so far, yeah, there's a few minor shortcomings with it, but I'm actually quite happy. If this was my only Midi software and my only machine with Midi capability, I wouldn't be that worried about it, because it seems to do exactly what it really should be doing. So it's not that bad. It's better now I've started using it than I thought it was going to be. So let's just see how you edit this. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So all you do is you go into the edit mode here, and these are the tracks and the notes, etc. So all you have to do to change anything on here is change the value. So on that last track it was basically lots of C's, and so you can change that. You can change that to whatever note you want to make it. So it's really easy. I mean, it's just simply as easy as clicking on it and changing its value. So it's not that bad at all. It's yeah, it's not intuitive, but it's quite straightforward. Okay, it's not as intuitive as some of the ATARI ST MIDI sequences, but I can see where this has come from, because originally this was for the 64, the 128, the Amigas and the ST, so it's kind of gone up from the 8-bit to the 16-bit ranks by actually just improving the software rather than radically redesigning it. Okay, so some of the features of this are pretty good. I mean, it all works off the mouse keys, and basically you select your tracks on this selection bar here. So this simple track is just a little bit of the notes I added in. If you want to go to the main track, and that plays that piece there, and all you can do is you can edit your notes. Okay, so you can work your way down just editing your note, your velocity and your duration. Now this keyboard isn't velocity sensitive, so you'll see it's just about set the same all the way, but you can change that, and that's not a problem. You can make things quieter or louder, and it's not bad the way it works. So if we went D, go back up and play, and you can see that it changes it immediately. So we'll put those back to C. Okay, so let's try something a little bit different just to see what this thing can do. Okay, so I've just set the keyboard up slightly differently, and we're going to just do a little bit of a track. Okay, so we're just going to play part of that back. Okay, and you see it does record it quite well, so you know it's not a bad system overall. It's quite good. It's very easy to use, but it's not intuitive. It's very kind of easy to work around, but it's kind of a little bit clunky at the same time. So overall, if you've got an Amiga and you do get hold of one of these Dr. T's musical software, again, try and get hold of one that's possibly not for educational use only. Try and get a commercial copy if you can, and read the manual. It's not a bad thing, and it works really well, and at the end of the day it kind of does what most of these MIDI recording systems do, but it's got some nice features. I mean, the editing feature alone is really good. I mean, you can play it through, and you can edit it as you wish all the way down and get your track absolutely perfect. Not so sure how it would handle longer compositions, because I think if you add in a few more keyboards and try and set them off at the same time by using the MIDI through, etc., it's going to struggle a bit, and this MIDI master has extra ports for MIDI in and out, and really you're going to need a machine like the 600 here with extra memory to do that. So overall it's quite a nice machine. It does really well. It's one I'll probably be using in the future because it has a few features that the other system I used previously doesn't have. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you could see what other differences and other MIDI software there is out there for the Amiga. It wasn't just the dominant ST that could do this stuff, and if you have an Amiga and you're into MIDI keyboards, etc., then it's well worth the go. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks for your time. Please subscribe. Thank you.